So we're going to get on to actually writing the essay now. What I would like to do normally at this point is actually to start with the wording of the question, or to focus on the question immediately. If it was a theme question, for instance, I might start with something about that theme, but this is a character question, so I need to obviously talk about Macbeth himself, maybe just pop it in a little bit of a context, saying what's happening, but I wouldn't do that in too much detail, just a sentence would do. So I might say, I'll just make that a little bit bigger so you can see. At the start of the play, Macbeth is, well, he's being praised, isn't he? So he's being praised, sorry about my typing, praised for his fight against the Scottish rebel Donald, and of course against the Norwegian invaders. So that's just popped it in a tiny little bit of context. So obviously the examiner knows that we know what's going on in that play. So, but straight away I'm going to focus upon some sort of AO1 where I get a quotation in there and perhaps identify the technique. So, I mean, for me, one of the most important parts is that simile. So Shakespeare's simile. I don't even have to say Shakespeare uses a simile, really. I could just go straight into it. So Shakespeare's simile, and the simile, of course, is like Valor's minion. And think about how that presents Macbeth. And just going back to my plan, I'm going to go straight for the brave. Presents Macbeth as a brave character. While I've obviously identified from when I've planned my extract that the metaphor, his brandished steel, smoke with bloody execution, shows his sort of fearlessness and determination. So whilst the metaphor is brandished steel, I'm going to put a slash there because that shows that the quotation falls on to the next line. Which obviously is important in Shakespeare's language if I was talking about iambic pentameter and so forth. So it's a good habit to get into, which smoked with bloody execution. And I'm not going to do the whole quotation. I can put my ellipsis there. I haven't got time to do the whole lot. And that kind of reveals his fearlessness. Obviously, that's quite different to the rest of the play or elsewhere in the play. And determination. Now, this determination actually really doesn't alter, really. It fluctuates slightly when he thinks about he's not going to go ahead with the murder, but actually he does remain a fairly determined character. Reveals his fearlessness and determination. What I would like to do, though, is focus back into this quotation for my AO2 and really think about analysing it in a fair amount of detail. So I'm going to focus in on the sort of noun phrase, really, about the smoked, the brandished steel smoking with bloody execution. So I just kind of concentrate on that noun phrase there. So I'm going to say the noun phrase describes his sword, makes Beth sound strong, perhaps, makes it sound skilled, and possibly even defiant. Defiant in as much as he perhaps kind of, he's defiant in as much as he's kind of, going against the rebel MacDonald, who clearly wants to oppose him. So I could perhaps then relate that to some context. So because of remember, Macbeth was written in the 17th century in 1606, but actually it was set in the 11th century. So because of the 11th century Christian idea of great, you can say the great chain of being, or the divine right of kings, divine right of kings. Macbeth also is shown as a righteous man. Actually, I'll change man to character. As a righteous character, as he is fighting for his king. There we go. And what I would like to do now, of course, is just going back to my importance of establishing the context here, is talk about the structure. So I could say it is worth noting here that Shakespeare, remember, it's always got an author, it's not the captain that comes in first, it's Shakespeare's choice, that Shakespeare chooses to introduce Macbeth in this way before the audience even meet him. And then I'll put my semicolon on there because I'm going to say why it's so important. Because Captain is so full of admiration for Macbeth, and Duncan's reaction is also one of admiration. Macbeth is established as a hero. This allows Shakespeare, to provide a contrast later in the play, so that the tragedy can unfold. If we didn't, of course, know that he was a hero in the beginning, if he was already classed as a tyrant, we really perhaps wouldn't have the same reaction at the end when Macbeth obviously succumbs to his ambitions, succumbs to the witches, and then of course goes from hero to zero. Okay, so you can see here then how I've started concentrating on the extract, and I would continue doing that for some time. So I'd probably be looking to make a couple of more points about the extract before then I would then talk about the rest of the play. So I'm going to put a few ellipses there to just indicate that I would actually talk a little bit more, of course, about that extract and about some of the techniques that Shakespeare uses, including structure, of course, as well as language and language techniques. So I could say something about in the rest of the play, we see Macbeth's bravery, because obviously I've talked about bravery at the beginning, so now I'm going to talk about the contrast there. Of course, you could embed this if you wanted to throughout, so you don't have to do all about the extract and then all about the play. You can, if you wanted to, especially if you know that you sometimes are short on time, you can integrate that. So you could talk about one and then the rest of the play, talk about another, then the rest of the play, and that's a fine structure to do. It really is your preference, but in this case I'm going to do all about the extract and then about the play. So in the rest of the play we see Macbeth's bravery turn to fear, obviously that's the opposite of brave, and I'm going to even say paranoia, because he does become paranoid towards the end. Once, and it's after, of course, he goes, or he sins against God, by committing regicide. I apologise about my typing. Okay. I could say that his cowardice is mocked by Lady Macbeth, who uses, I'm going to say Shakespeare actually, rather than she using them. It's mocked by Lady Macbeth. Shakespeare conveys this mockery through the use of adjectives linked to weakness. And of course, by saying that her comments are linked to weakness, we've shown another contrast in his character, because obviously at the beginning, here all the adjectives that were used were linked to strength, such as when she calls him infirm of purpose. Notice the short burst of quotations there. You're not expected to quote massive amounts from if you haven't got the extract in front of you. And then just like kind of close analysis, look at that exclamation mark. That's really important. So the exclamation mark heightens disgust for his lack of manliness, for the want of a better word, which of course is in clear contrast to how Macbeth was perceived by the captain and Duncan earlier, or I could just say in the extract. And then now I've made a clear link, haven't I then? And obviously that will help me get my meet my assessment objective 1. So here, when I have said about in the rest of the play, and again when I've just said that last remark about in contrast, what I'm doing there is really focusing upon the task, and that gets AO1 ticked off nicely. I've started here, of course, exploring language and talking about the importance of that. Obviously, I could take that a lot further. I've mentioned context. So already I've hit quite a number of assessment objectives, and that's really how you should start structuring your response to this sort of question.